What's going on, everybody? Jeff Fuller with you. Jay Fuller Interviews. Jay Fuller Interviews on YouTube. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jay Fuller Interviews. You can also join the Facebook group, Jay Fuller Interviews. We're on Instagram and Twitter, as well as Jay Fuller Interviews, and now on all the podcasting channels, Google Podcasts, Apple iTunes Podcasts, as the Backfire Podcast with Jeff Fuller of Jay Fuller Interviews. That's Jeff Fuller of Jay Fuller Interviews. Now, I believe people's stories make our stories better. If we would just take the time and make the time to listen to them, we will certainly become better people, less ignorant, and certainly have a story that's more impactful. One with a great story right now is Jumaine Jones. Jumaine, thanks so much for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
So, Jumaine, you are 6'8". You played several seasons in the NBA. You played professional basketball all over the world. But where did you grow up?
I'm born and raised in a small town called Cocoa, Florida, man. Actually, probably about 10 minutes away from the space shuttle, where the space shuttle takes off in Cape Canaveral.
And you played at Georgia. You were SEC Freshman of the Year. How did you choose Georgia?
After I moved from Florida, I moved to a small town in Georgia with my aunt, who actually really worked us hard down there, man. And I grew up without a father being around, and my high school coach was my father figure. So for him, giving me everything that he gave to me and understanding me and how big a role he played in my life. And as far as, with my skills, I always had the mentality like I needed someone else that was like him. And in my mentality, I wanted to be around somebody that understood me, and somebody understood the fact that I grew up without a father, understand that, there'd be a lot of things that I would be going through mentally where they could help me. So I had a thing where I wanted to go to a school where there was a Black head coach. And at the time, Tubby Smith was there at the University of Georgia. So that had a huge impact of me going there. Not only that he was a Black coach, man, he was actually the only coach that actually never promised me anything. He never promised me a starting job. He never promised me the world. All he was saying is, Jumaine, if you come in and you work hard, man, you'll be able to earn yourself a position. And I respected that because I was a kid that always had to earn everything anyway. So that was more of something that I was accustomed to. And I respected him for that. Everybody else had, everything thrown at me and the kitchen sink. So to get somebody who was as humble as Tubby Smith was, to be able to have somebody at my level to not promise him anything, that intrigued me.
Jumaine, why did you choose number 20 when you were at Georgia?
Well, I was 33 most of my life. When we was playing AAU with the Atlanta Celtics, we had a guy that played with us that committed suicide. So everybody that went off to college that year chose the number 20 just to, represent him.
Jumaine, when you were in high school, when did you realize that you had a chance to play beyond high school?
I would say my junior year. I started noticing a lot of production. I had been putting in a lot of work. I had just come off a big summer with the Atlanta Celtics, and I think my competitive drive really came in at that time to be able to play all across the world with one of the elite programs, AAU programs with the Atlanta Celtics, to get that competition, to go seek other talents and be able to compete at a high level. So that alone made my game step up a lot more. So, and that my junior year, I came in averaging like 28 points a game. So that was then when, my coach was having practices and was telling me, like, listen here, man, you're going to have to work on other parts of your game because you're going to be able to play high level basketball. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to dunk every time. So, so to be able to get, have a coach who I could trust the process with, somebody that put me in a place where, I trusted everything he told me. So that's when I knew having someone like him to teach me and to groom me into listening to everything he had to tell me was that moment, my junior year.
So when you were at Georgia, it was said about you that you had a grown man's body. You had an NBA body at that point in time. When did you start hitting the weights or getting on that program, or were you just naturally genetically big and strong?
Um, no, I really put on a lot of weight when I got to Georgia because one of the things I regret in high school is never lifting weights. I never lift weights in high school, but I was naturally strong. My aunt lived on 40 acres, so we was the guys that always was throwing watermelons and cantaloupes and all that kind of stuff, man. So we didn't really have to lift much weights. But when I got to the University of Georgia, playing in the SEC, man, my first year, man, I was always on the ground. So that's when I knew it was a difference between being naturally strong and being basketball strong. So that's when I started hitting the iron pretty hard, getting creatine, trying to get some size on me. Because going into high school, leaving high school, I was 205.
Hmm.
And then my first year, I put on 20 pounds.
Yeah.
So, and it was definitely needed playing in the SEC.
When did you get your growth spurt? It's listed now that you're 6'8". Is that how tall you really are, or were you under that, taller than that?
Well, I'm at 6'8", but I had two growth spurts. I went from 5'9" to 6'3" in the summer. That was my between my 7th grade and 8th grade year. I went from 5'9" to 6'3", and then from my 9th grade, no, from 8th grade to 9th grade, I went from 6'3" to 6'7".
Wow.
So I was 6'7" in the 9th grade, and then I grew one more inch. That was it. I was 14, wearing a size 14, and it just stopped from there.
So I definitely want to go on and talk about your pro career in the NBA and then beyond, but I just want to give some credit again to your high school coach. As you mentioned before, you didn't have a strong father figure, and he played that role. Sometimes high school coaches, AAU coaches get overlooked because we look at the glitz and the glamour of the professional game. Could you just talk once more about how much it meant to you to have a coach that cared about you, not just on the basketball court, not just about making money, but just for you as a person and really as a kid in those days?
Well, it's very difficult, being the fact that I've been through the process already, to actually have a coach that actually cares about you. And, like he was also the principal at the high school. So he would always be in my classrooms and making sure that he cared about my grades. He like had me over every weekend to make sure I was doing my homework. Like he actually took me in as one of his own. So to be able to get that, man, and I always tell people in this world that I always wanted to be somebody that had an impact like a coach, because people really don't understand how much an impact that coaches play, because you got kids coming in and out of programs, and when you got a coach that actually cares about his players, man, and my coach been, and he's still coaching now, like he's been coaching so many years, and I always think like, man, think about how many kids that he played an impact in their lives in some way or some fashion. So they really don't get enough credit for what they do, because it's almost like they have 100 kids that they have to take care of every year. You know what I mean? And then 100 more coming in, 100 more coming in. Like, how many people can say that they have that much impact on so many people?
Yeah, it's really good. Jumaine, now, if my math is correct and I read it correctly, you left Georgia a year early. What made you have that decision to leave school early?
Well, I actually left Georgia 2 years early. I was actually in a position where my daughter was about to be pregnant. My daughter was about to be pregnant. I'm sorry. That my daughter was about to be born. And I was faced with a tough decision, but I never really wanted to leave school. So they end up firing the coach that we had at the time. And Jim Herrick was the coach that came in. And I never had any intentions on leaving school. I just wanted to make sure that the coach had something lined up where I can work, be able to earn some money to be able to take care of my daughter was about to be born, because I was having that much fun at the University of Georgia. I really wanted to stay in school. Um, then the coach told me that if I left school, I would be pumping gas in 10 years. So that was my motivation to leave school. When I had somebody to tell me that, like I was one of those people that always felt like, I only needed one person to believe in me, and that was me. And I was so confident in everything that I had worked hard for, just to hear somebody tell me that, all that did was just motivated me to go and leave just to prove him wrong.
So in 1999, the NBA draft, you're actually selected in the first round by the Atlanta Hawks. But before we get to that point, did you know the Hawks were going to select you? Did you feel as though you were going to go in the first round?
I actually thought I was doomed, to be honest. If anybody remember, like I got invited to the draft. So I was in the green room. So they only invite people that's expected to be lottery to the draft. So um, that was probably one of the tough experiences I had, because I had only worked out for the lottery teams. After the lottery teams went by, I was like, I'm not getting drafted in the first round. And it was so good that I had the opportunity to talk to Larry Brown. One of the times I was training in Philadelphia, got an opportunity to talk to him, man. He was so intrigued about, you know, us sitting down having a conversation, and he was like, "Man, it's so sad that I would never have an opportunity to draft you." And the Sixers didn't have another pick, so luckily they was able to work something out with the Hawks, and was able to pick me up from there.
So how excited were you to know that you had been traded from the Hawks to Philadelphia?
Well, I was actually I was sad about it until I knew where I was going. I was sad because me and Deion Glover, we played with Atlanta Celtics together, and he got drafted by the Atlanta Hawks. So I was really excited about actually getting ready to play with him again, because we had grew up together, playing together, AAU all this time. We was actually supposed to go to University of Georgia together, and he backed out at the last minute to go to Georgia Tech. So I was just thought it was crazy that we was actually going to be playing on the same team. But then again, after sitting down with Larry Brown, who's actually a living legend, to get that opportunity to play for a coach like him, I was sad for a minute. Then I had seen the bright side of it, playing for a coach like Larry Brown.
And so walk me through your rookie season playing for the Philadelphia 76ers. Unfortunately, did not end how you wanted, but you did make it to the NBA Finals going against the Los Angeles Lakers. What was that experience like, just being in the NBA Finals?
Well, it's probably one of the best experiences I ever had in my pro career, to be honest. I know my first year playing for the 76ers was tough, because I came from leading the SEC in scoring, to be able to come to a team like the Sixers, who I thought they needed more scoring, and for Larry Brown to tell me my first day, like, look here, man, you got to find yourself something else to do, because we got a little guy who's going to shoot 50 times a night. So, and that was tough for me to hear, because all I ever done was score my whole life. So it taught me a lot then about being able to adjust and to be able to work on other things, even though that you're a professional, to try to make things work for your team. And for Larry Brown to even have the confidence in me once he made the trade, he met with me. He made a trade with Atlanta Hawks to get Dikembe. He was trading Tony Kukoc, who was coming off the bench at the time. For him to make that trade, he had to have a lot of confidence in me. So that meant a whole lot to me, coming from Larry Brown, one of the best coaches to ever coach. That for him to have the confidence in me, for my teammates to have that much confidence in me. So it really made my job a lot easier. And it was very exciting for somebody to be 20 years old, to be starting in the NBA Finals, somebody from Cocoa, Florida. Like, who would have ever dreamed that?
So Jumaine, and I in no way am I trying to compare myself to Allen Iverson, but I'm only 5'9", 5'9.5", and I loved when I got in the lane and I could throw up a teardrop or a floater, something that would go in over those big guys, whether it was a practice or a scrimmage or just watching from the sidelines with Iverson doing it to other players. Were you ever just simply shocked at what somebody his size could do?
I mean, every night for 2 years, night in and night out, man, you kind of get caught watching him. When you got a player like him that's that small and the heart is so big, you know, sometimes you do get caught watching the game, and a lot of people's like, why is everybody standing around? And I was like, man, sometimes you become a fan when you got a player so exciting like Allen Iverson, somebody that can score at will and get to the basket at will. Um, you know, it was amazing. Like even as a player, you know, you get caught watching. So that was exciting to be able to get to play with a Hall of Famer like Allen Iverson. It's funny that you bring his name up. He was just here in Atlanta this past weekend, and we got a chance to link up.
Hey, so in those finals, and of course in your NBA career, you got to play against a giant, and that being Shaquille O'Neal. I always hear people say that you can't explain how big he is until you're actually next to him. You're 6'8", you're not a small guy, but is Shaq as big as all the stories say?
He's definitely as big as everyone says. Shaq is a good friend of mine too. We actually used to work out at his house in Orlando during the summertime, and I mean, like he makes me look like a midget, and I'm 6'8". You know, I'm 6'8". Well, I'm 260 now, but at the time, my playing time, I was 245. So, and he was, you know, Larry Brown was like, man, whenever he gets the ball, man, foul him if you get caught up. And I can remember a couple of plays that I got caught switched down on him, man, and I thought I was going in the rim with the ball. But he's definitely a giant. Um, a gentle teddy bear. But when he stepped on that court, man, he was one of the most dominant. I really had a lot of respect for the Dikembe Mutombo after that series because he did the best job that he could possibly do on a player, and Shaq was just that dominant.
And a few years later, you actually got to play with the Lakers. Can you just share when you found out about Kobe's passing?
It's probably one of the toughest times for me because the simple fact that I never really got an opportunity to tell him how much he meant to me. You know, the 1 year that I had the opportunity to play with him, to actually witness the greatness, to be able to come in an hour early and see Kobe already in practices, drenched in sweat, to stay after practice and Kobe still there working. To actually watch the process, and somebody, I always tell people he worked harder than anybody I ever seen, not even close, hands down, and how much he brought to the game. And for me, it just hurt so much that I was never able to let him know, you know, how much he changed my mentality and changed the way I approach the game and changed the way I live my life.
Jumaine, the untimely passing of your AAU teammate, did that help prepare you to deal with Kobe's passing as well?
Well, I mean, that wasn't the first time that I witnessed, you know, something like that happening. So it's been quite a few times. A lot of people don't know the reason why I moved to Georgia. I actually witnessed a murder when I was in Cocoa, Florida, at a very young age. So that was one of the reasons. There was a lot of drug dealing, a lot of killings going on. So somebody that I actually knew ended up getting killed. So that was the first time, you know, and I actually witnessed that. My mom at that point was like, okay, listen, we got to get you in a better place. And that's what moved me to Camilla, Georgia. So that was one of my first things, but it's been a couple times that, you know, I witnessed, you know, passing. So I was able to handle it a little bit better, but it was just, you know, you never can prepare for something like that for somebody that, you know, inspired you so much.
Yeah, and after your time with the Sixers, you went on to play with the Cavaliers, Celtics, Lakers, Charlotte, and Phoenix. And I know your son Quincy is getting looked at by a college program, and so I know that probably gives you such pride as well. But first of all, can you believe that you're that old that you would have a son looking to go to college? I mean, my son is a freshman in college, and I have to remember that I'm not as cool as I think I am. We're all getting older, but.
Well, it makes me feel older that I have a 21-year-old who's a junior at Georgia State right now. You know, Quincy's 18, and I have a 16 and 15-year-old that's growing up so fast. So it's kind of like, man, they're getting older, and then I start thinking like, well, I'm getting older too.
So when you were traded to Cleveland, this is what I've had the opportunity to interview a few guests, guys that played in the NBA, but they weren't the long veterans that played, for the same team for 15 years. It was more your story of playing for multiple teams. How difficult was that being traded, not on draft day, but after you had that stint with the Sixers?
Well, that was the first time I had the opportunity to learn the business of the NBA. Because after that finals game, man, I was so I felt so empowered. Like, man, listen, man, you did so great. Nobody expected you to do the things that you did. From the day after the finals, I was in the gym working to get better. You know what I mean? Like, I got to be better next year so I could do more. And I get a call from my agent, and he was like, man, listen, man, you about to be traded to Cleveland Cavaliers, and I just couldn't understand, like, why would they trade me? Like, I just played well, I made a pretty good run. I was a big part of what was happening. Like, why would they trade me? And then I had to learn the business that he really, they told me that they really wanted to get rid of Tyrone Hill, and they wanted me in with the package. My money fit with that trade. So that's when I learned the business. But it was tough, and luckily, the times that I was traded was in the off season, so it made my transition easier. The times I've got traded, so I never was traded during the season. So that's the thing that can make it even tougher.
Definitely. I'm up here in Vermont, so in the New England states, and there's a player, Joe Fallon. He played hockey for the University of Vermont, and he was signed after college to go play semi-pro hockey. And so I asked him, when did it hit you that you actually are a professional? And he said shortly after he signed the contract, he walked into a grocery store and he said, I can buy anything I want in here for dinner, whether it's steak or swordfish. When you signed your contracts in the NBA or on payday, when did it hit you that, wow, you're actually getting paid professional money for a game that you got to play?
I mean, from the first day that I got drafted, man, I think it hit me then, from that day, that I was professional, just to hear my name and be able to shake hands with the commissioner. Like, that's something I always watched growing up. Like, to shake his hand was kind of the thing that solidified, like, man, you're a professional now. You just shake David Stern's hand. So from that point, with the money, I never understood money when I was younger. Like, I was still like, I didn't understand anything about Uncle Sam and, how money worked at that time. I was 19 years old when I got drafted. So all of that was a process for me to learn, because a lot of stuff they didn't teach you in school. So for my first 4 years, I was learning how money worked.
So Jumaine Jones, former NBA player, makes some time. Georgia standout, played for several teams in the NBA. Now that we're 20 minutes in, I will let you in on a secret. Hopefully you don't hang up on me. But I grew up a North Carolina Tar Heel fan, because in Vermont, when you had to pick a team, in fifth grade, I had an uncle in Carolina, so I went with it. When you look at all the competition that you played against in college, even in high school, AAU, are you ever surprised at where people ended up? In meaning, were there guys that you thought were can't miss, but they didn't make the NBA, or guys you thought were scrubs that have had long NBA careers?
I would say actually one of your North Carolina Tar Heels, Ed Cota. He was somebody that I really felt like was the guy. Like, I thought he was one of the best point guards to play in college, to be honest. And he didn't have the career that I expected him to. That's probably the only guy that I can say that I expected for him to do great things at the next level.
Now, you are 6'8", as we've said multiple times. When I used to dream of the perfect NBA size, I always thought 6'4", 6'5". As I mentioned before, I'm like 5'10", maybe 5'9 3/4. But did you ever want to be taller, or did you think it would have been a benefit to you if you were more a 6'5" guard? When you were growing up in your perfect ideal body, what size were you?
I wanted to be 6'10". I always wanted to be 6'10". I just felt like that's the perfect height to be able to have the ability that I had. I was always that person that can score, that can rebound, that can do multiple things. And I always thought that to be able to do that at 6'10", I was thinking like I would be like Kevin Durant. I mean, not Kevin Durant, Kevin Garnett.
Yeah.
I always looked at him as being that person who can do multiple things. So I thought 6'10" was the ideal height.
So talk to me a little bit, or talk to young listeners, as you played for different teams, the Sixers, Cavs, Boston, Lakers, Charlotte, and Phoenix in the NBA, about the different roles. And I know some kids, whether high school, AAU, it's hard when you are known as a scorer or you are known as a primary ball handler, that if you want to make a team, sometimes you have to adjust your game. How did you learn to do that? Did that take maturity on your end, or did it come naturally to just adjust for what the coach was looking for?
Well, I mean, I think, I take my hats off to my high school coach, because he was the person that actually told me, like, listen, man, it's going to be a lot of things that's going to happen different at the highest level. So you need to be prepared for whatever you need to face. So to go through that process in high school, to be able to learn to do multiple things, was great for me, because he was always letting my teammates know, like, listen, everybody, there's only one basketball, and everybody can't shoot it. So you got to find a way to make yourself effective. But it was definitely it was tough for me to be able to, in the beginning, because then it was all mental to be able to actually put it into play, with the Sixers. But then I found my way where, I just made myself the best rebounder I could, the best defender that I could, just to be able to get on the floor. So any team that I was on, I found something that I can bring to the team that kept me on the basketball floor. So to the younger kids that's out here, man, it's always great to score, but it's a lot of other things that you can do on the basketball court to make yourself effective. Defending, like, it's hard to find a defender in the NBA. You got guys that's making millions of dollars just to defend. People that's rebounding, like guys just doing the little things, are very valuable. So you don't always have to be a scorer, to make the NBA. You just got to be able to get that effort on each end, and whatever team needs, you got to be able to fit that.
So my research hopefully is correct. It says you're in the Basketball Hall of Fame because you scored the final basket of the 1990s. Do you remember that?
I remember it like yesterday. It's funny, we was in Portland, and I was actually, I was a rookie at the time, so I had never, that was actually one of the first games I ever played in, because we was getting blowed out or something like that. And, coach put me in like garbage time. So I was excited about getting in. And I had missed like my first 2 or 3 shots. And then I hit the last shot. And then when I go in the locker room, I had no clue what was going on. The trainer comes up to me like, listen, man, give me your uniform, your shorts, and your shoes and everything. In my mind, I'm thinking like, I mean, I didn't play that bad. Are y'all cutting me already? Like, so I thought I was getting cut. And then he was like, no, man, you just hit the last shot of the millennium, man. They want all of your stuff because they want to put it in the Hall of Fame. I was like, whew, okay.
Oh, that's awesome. And a couple questions will get you out. Jumaine Jones makes some time, former NBA player, but you got to play all over the world. And I know probably you wanted to play longer in the NBA, but there's certainly some benefits of seeing different parts of this great globe that we live on. Can you just share some of the memories that you have, some of your favorite spots that you got to play?
Oh, man, I tell you what, people always ask me what I like best, and kids always ask me, why did I leave the NBA? Well, first of all, no one ever wants to leave the NBA. I always have to tell kids that. So, it's only 450 players every year in the NBA, and some got to leave and some got to go. And I always give people this, the people that was at my position that came in, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, and just 3. That means some people got to go at my position. So, I was one of those guys. I played 8 years in the NBA, and then, I was fortunate to be able to go over and play overseas, which really started, a lot for me because I had never been overseas before. To be able to get that experience, to be able to experience different cultures, to eat different foods. You got to have that kind of mentality to be able to do that. So it was one of the best experiences I ever had to be able to actually take my kids. I had two daughters that I had over in Italy. They was speaking fluent Italian. To be able to take them to Jerusalem and take them through the walk. And for them to be like, Dad, I read that in the Bible. You know what I mean? It's just to give my kids that experience, and also for me to get experience to see different parts of the world. And I tell you what, man, I always tell people, man, you never really appreciate being American until you travel the world.
That's true. That's true. Jumaine Jones making some time and staying with us. So thanks so much for doing so. Question that I have now for so many athletes or people that have retired or moved on. Do you enjoy watching basketball, playing pickup basketball, or is that something that you feel from a chapter long ago that you don't do as much?
No, I mean, I still work. I'm still in the gym 4 or 5 times out of the week, because I hate the treadmill. The treadmill is so boring, and I still try to keep myself in pretty good shape. So I go work out at least 4 or 5 times out of the week. That's just something I've been programmed to do throughout my life. So it's kind of hard to do away with that. As far as that's the only thing I could see that I would actually do to keep myself in shape. Because, like I said, I wouldn't be running a mile or running around a complex or nothing like that. But playing basketball would definitely be something that I would always do, probably until I can't run anymore.
Who is one of your favorite teammates that you still keep in contact with today?
I had 2 favorite teammates of like people. It's funny that you asked that. Allen Iverson is one of them, and the simple reason I say he's one of the best teammates I've played with is because he was always for his team. Like him and Larry Brown used to get into it a lot because Larry Brown was so strict on everybody else except Allen Iverson, but he wanted to keep everybody else in check. And we used to complain about a lot of stuff that Larry Brown did, and Allen Iverson used to always overhear stuff that we were talking about, and he would be the person to actually go and try to tell Larry Brown, like, listen, you got to stop this and this and this and that, because he overheard us talking about it. So he was always for his teammates. He was always protecting his teammates. He's the only guy I've ever played with that come in after every game and tell his teammates how much he loved them. Even after losses and wins, like, for him to come in, somebody his caliber to come in and tell his teammates how much he loved them night in and night out, man. That always meant a lot to me. And his heart was so big, on and off the court. He always cared about who was, he called it I forgot what he called, who was in the war room with him. So he always showed love to everybody that, anybody he'd ever played with would be able to tell you the same thing. Like even, when he came here, I hadn't seen him in like 2 years. He was actually, when he see me, he was in tears and like so much joy just to see me. And I'm pretty sure because a lot of the memories brought back, from the finals and, a lot of stuff that we went through together.
Yeah, again, Jumaine Jones, first-round draft pick in 1999 in the NBA draft, played for the Philadelphia 76ers, the Cavs, Celtics, Lakers, Charlotte, and Phoenix. We're going to get you out on this question, Jumaine, and once more, sincerely, thanks for making the time to be a part. If or when, I stole this question from Hernando Planos, who does a Be Contagious podcast. So make sure you check that out. He's a tremendous guy and much better basketball coach than I am. But he always asks at the end of his interview, if or when that feature film is made about your life, who plays you in that feature film?
Ooh, who plays me?
So while you think about it, I'll tell you mine. I always joke that because we look so much alike, tongue in cheek, I say The Rock, Dwayne Johnson would play me. Now, the best response is my friend said maybe Kevin Hart, but never The Rock, because I do not look like him. But what say you? Who plays you in that feature film about your life?
I would say Denzel Washington.
Oh, my wife would watch that one. My wife would watch that for sure. Jumaine, thank you so much for making the time. We wish you all the best, and we'll definitely keep in touch.
All right. Thanks for having me.
And again, that's Jumaine Jones. Makes some time on my YouTube channel, Jay Fuller Interviews. Join the Facebook group, Jay Fuller Interviews, Instagram and Twitter, Jay Fuller Interviews. And now on all the podcast channels, whether it's Google, Apple, iTunes, it is the Backfire Podcast with Jeff Fuller of Jay Fuller Interviews. And we thank you so much for making the time. Take the time and make the time to listen to someone's story, because it will make your story much better, less ignorant, and certainly